So I wanted to do a reaction on this video from Medium Man. I already almost watched the entire thing through, but there was a lot of comments I wanted to make on this general conversation because a lot of people are missing some aspects of the female nature that that is not being addressed when dealing with why women say they want a nerdy guy, because it's coded language. A lot of people, they take to these conversations thinking that women are going to be generally honest, but if you notice, they're never generally honest. They always speak in some type of coded language where there's underlying emotions and things that they connect with, which doesn't make any logical sense, but it makes logical sense to them. Let me just play it out and then let me show you what I'm talking about.
A green flag that I passed up in my 20s.
Yeah, like, sometimes we're like, oh, I don't want the guy that's lover, but like now we don't know.
Yeah, the good boys. I was into them. Let me be quiet. No, I like the bad boys. I was into
Y'all are feeling behind now.
And so if you notice, for instance, they don't use adult language where they can't even really describe the aspects of what they like about so-called bad boys, because when it gets down to it, they want somebody as childish as them, as emotionally unstable as them, who makes bad decisions on a whim like them, a person that doesn't really think of the future like them. This is the reason why whenever they pick their baby daddies and things of that nature, it's always the same. These people operate just like them when it comes to how they operate with problems, problem solving, and this is why they are a dysfunctional couple, toxic couple. This is why they like what they call toxic. They like the highs and the lows of relationships. They don't want something stable, reliable, and good and pure. They literally always go for chaos and destruction.
Well, I was young and dumb. I grew up,
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, our taste.
And let's be real, they never really grow up. They grow up physically and not mentally, because they say all of these things, but you see, it's like, okay, so what choices have you really made that were different than what you were always doing? If you're in your 50s and you're just now saying, oh, I don't have this type anymore, you really didn't learn from the first relationship that you were in, because most men never really have a type, because that's a childish mentality. But when you have a type, you go against any logical understanding because you're looking for a template. And this is the same way women date. This is why they have many failures. If it didn't work the first time, why do you think it will work the 30th time? This is why they're still learning things that they should have learned a long time ago.
Change. I was interview with Sierra where she's like, the palette changes.
Absolutely. As you get older, you want different things out of life.
You want different things?
Yeah.
When I look back on all of these energies, it's a shame I gave them so much time and there were sweet energies that I didn't.
Yeah.
And so now I see those sweet energies getting married and starting families. I'm just like, dang, that probably could have been me if I recognized the security in those individuals at the time.
A couple of days ago, I accidentally went viral for a video I did last week telling women to marry a nerd.
Back when I was still having sex with men who were...
Because if you notice, a lot of them will cheer each other on in stupidity and immaturity. And this is not something that men do. You don't see men say, oh man, oh, you see how that women crashed out on him, threw all his stuff out, bleached it. Oh man, that stuff must have been good. That's the reason why he had to deal with it, etc. You always see really childish men that usually have dating issues, and also that usually are raised by women, or have really weak and conventional thinking. This is the reason why they choose women like this. Why would you choose somebody based upon just their looks and not their the details about them? and this is the same type of dating mentality that women have, but on the really on steroids. Let's be real.
Adidas slides and dirty white socks. You know the ones. I wish I could tell me then that I'd be married to like a whole ass pediatrician sitting outside in our backyard by the fire he built me, drinking an old fashioned, waiting for him to come down.
Because if you still hear, there is no difference. Because okay, so let me give you an example. So let's be real. We all know what women like her usually do behind their married man's back, right? So when they were younger, right, they were just dumb while doing the same thing. They would have the good guy, then they would have the quote unquote bad guy, right? They would be having their fun of the stupidity of the bad boy while dating the stable guy that gets them flowers or whatever like that. They might put them in a guy friend situation, or the friend zone or something like that. But regardless, always a man on rotation, right? But a lot of the times they would be 100% attached, emotionally, physically attached to the so-called bad boys. This is who becomes their baby daddy. This is who they spend all their intimate moments and stuff like that with. And now that they've seen that these same men that have the same mentality as them, selfish, childish, really, all of this stuff, right? Emotionally unstable. So they're seeing that doesn't match well with them. So now they're moving the emotional part and some of the physical to a nice guy, because let's be real, they stop doing all these things, right? But the overall goal is to be able to have a permanent friend-zoned guy who gets to deal with their BS, who gets to deal with their bills, who gets to deal with all these things while they go and get their excitement behind closed doors, because they're not young and stupid. And it's just like, no, they just evolve the game to be more sneaky and conniving. Because overall, when it comes to them explaining that they want a guy that's a nerd, all they're doing is saying they don't want competition now that the competition is steep for them, now that they can't compete with younger bodies, now that they can't compete with the movement of men awakening.
Serious to join me because he's putting our kids to bed. Marry the nerd.
Growing up as a nerdy black dude, as I have, you would know that black women would not touch you with a 10-foot pole. But I'll talk about that later. Back to the tweet. It was so bad that somebody started...
And this is the thing. So, and you guys are gonna say, "Hey, can you just play the video?" I was what you would call a nerdy guy as well. Now, I grew into my looks. Yeah, I wasn't really bad looking, but I was fat when I was younger, and I would say this: a lot of men, their shortcomings actually come from not being socially aware. Because I've even seen a lot of guys that are in nerd circles and stuff like that. If you actually polish them, get the mannerisms out of them, all of that stuff, they would be attractive men. They have good features, jaw lines and stuff. And then even when you look at your normal guy that gets a lot of girls, it's not that he's the best looking, he just has the best social proofing. Because if you look at him, he has the modern clothes, he knows how to talk like he's barely past high school, which women like. Just dumb enough to get along with a woman and not set her off, but smart enough that he can manipulate the situation to get what he wants out of her. Like a 14-year-old. Like literally, you're dealing with a preteen brained, fully grown up woman that hasn't learned from her past, and this is what these men, like to manipulate and get into. Because when you are a actual guy that is operating like an actual man, where you're trying to get into a relationship where it's mutually beneficial, you're not having that parasitic behavior like a woman. And this is why they date and they're attracted to energies that are like theirs, like the F-boy mentality, where it's like, hey, I'm gonna go use X amount of years screwing this woman, that woman, this woman over, when at the end of the day, we're like, what are you doing? Because I don't have the same story. I've dealt with a lot of women, but I've never been in the game of screwing women over. Every experience you learn and grow from, but you shouldn't be out there ruining people You have to be a bad person to do that. So that's why I say, like, this is where everybody's story is a little bit different. I got my experience later in life, but let them continue.
A separate Twitter thread where they asked black women to post their nerdy black boyfriends. And all that Twitter thread ended up being was black women posting their conventionally attractive boyfriends who just so happen to be in the nerdy stuff. Now I will
And this is where I was going with this conversation, right? They don't want actual nerds. They want guys with nerd tendencies. They want guys who are not going to be out there looking for women, because if you okay, so whenever they say nerd, a lot of times all they mean is usually a guy that is milder than a F-boy, but might have tendencies like, hey, I'm not trying to go out to the club, I'm trying to play games. I might go to the gym, play games. I might, like, all they want is a guy that's more easily controllable and they always have access to. That's generally what they're saying. Because even when it came to the other one that the other one was talking about, she wasn't talking about like, oh, my husband's into video games and stuff. No, her whole point was he's probably a 9-to-5 guy, probably doesn't work out, probably doesn't have like a really super attractive edge to himself, but he's generally decent enough for her to say, oh, okay, let me make this safe move. And then, as I said before, like, if she's talking like that, she's doing other stuff, because she's probably taking advantage of his whole subservient attitude. Because a lot of these women, they do the whole thing where you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And this is why she says stuff like that. Like she has him trained. Oh, he's putting them to bed. And of course, he thinks he's being a loving husband or whatever. But what she's thinking is, you see this? I got my guy. He's my little servant. And if I need to go do something, he'll do what I need him to do. And then I could work around that. And a lot of times they're saying stuff in code, because if you even look into a lot of these comments that a lot of these women be saying, they always be saying some slick stuff. Oh yeah, you got him trained. Oh, I need one like that. They'll say some stuff like this. And it's because they all know what they're saying. They all know what they would do with these moments where you're blindly trusting them and you feel like, oh, okay, oh, you're already, wanting to play the game, and you already good with the kids. Oh, okay, so let me go on this girls trip. Oh, okay, you already good with the kids. You like being the husband at the house. Hey, so let me, hey, I got this late night job. Oh, I'm a career woman all of a sudden. That's what they're thinking. And that's why I said a lot of men aren't addressing this aspect of it. It's not just they just want nerds now. No, no, you're not hearing it. They exploit the nerdy tendencies. That's really what, and they're saying a lot of stuff that you got to fill in the blanks with.
There was a few couples in there that truly were just two nerds falling in love. But what made the tweet even funnier was that in that thread, a couple of black women were getting exposed for lusting after white men in the past.
There was a guy, I think in last live stream, he was like, yeah, when I put up the anime / gamer girl, it was a couple guys say, well, if they're a black anime gamer girl, they tend to be into white men. And this is what Flat Top Chicken is actually saying. And also, he just confirmed, he was like, hey man, the women who were putting the pictures up of their boyfriend, they were conventionally attractive men, black men, but they were just into nerdy stuff like anime. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want to speak too much for him, but I think he does an amazing job. But I see some correlation in regards to the black gamer girls being attracted to white men. I wonder what that is, why that is, and why black men can't just be that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, let's continue.
Got to say about that is, those in glass houses should not throw stones. Now, here comes the part where I talk about my personal experience on this topic. I don't know if you realize it yet, but I myself am a black nerd. I am an African American male who possesses unconventional hobbies such as anime and video games. I'm not going to use the term blur.
And see, and that's the thing too. I think geeks supposed to be intelligent. Now, the thing is, for me myself, I don't consider myself any extreme. Uh, but a lot of women, they would probably still throw me into the category of a nerd, because a lot of people don't really understand what a lot of these things are. Yes, I do have those different things that are unconventional, but also a lot of these women are pretty much what's unconventional to them is somebody that's not a ignorant thug. Somebody that's not trying to be a knockoff rapper, somebody that's not a template boy. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, with me, I like my intellect. I lean strongly into my intellect, but I'm very balanced. Like I used to model, and these are things that I grew into. It was me making myself more socially proficient, but at the same time keeping my own identity, because there is a time where, and they're going to get into this about how looks play a part. Yes, and this is what I always talk about as well. I'm like, you have to be realistic, but also if you aren't doing your part, you're not going to get a genuine reaction anyways, or genuine connection. If you have to be able to take care of and appeal to a woman in order to keep them. It doesn't matter what type of person you are. There's still things that you have to do on your end, just like what women have to do on their end. You can't sit there and get a guy and then sit there and do what most women do. Oh, I'm gonna get a guy who is healthy with his testosterone levels, and then I'm gonna hold out on sex in his prime years. So what do you think is going to happen? You're setting yourself up for failure. But we're not going to that topic right now, but this is my whole point.
Because I think that shit sounds fucking stupid. I've been playing video games and watching anime since I was in grade school. I got a fat ass PS2 game collection. On occasion, I hunt down rare retro games.
I had whole binders with video game guides that I used to have. I used to print them out. Had my favorite anime females. I loved Gundam, DBZ. I was listening to AMV work. I still listen to AMV sometimes when I work out. My whole point is, I'm not one of those guys that run around and have a business suit with a Naruto headband on. No, I had some full blown cosplay outfits. I've done all types of stuff. But my whole point is, it's all when you're an adult, there's appropriate time to do these things, and so in front of women is not always the best time. Even though you want somebody that pretty much appeals to some of the things that you do, I noticed that there's a lot of immaturity, and sometimes when people get into collections and different things like that, because in reality, if your goal in life is to be able to have and raise kids and start a family, then a big part of your decision making process and even your investments are going to deal with that. So you put away a lot of things that maybe a lot of nerds would say are hobbies, and then be able to concentrate on things that are more viable for reacting in normal society, that will help you get your businesses, get your connections, and then also help you move forward with business and lifestyle. Because when I was in high school, a lot of them didn't know how to put on deodorant, and then even moving into adulthood, I went to conventions and these people don't know how to put on deodorant. So there's a whole there's not just a stigma on that, there was hygiene involved and stuff like that. So I'm gonna say it like this: a lot of the women get passes for everything. Women could be sloppy, women could be overweight, women could be rude-mouthed, women could have a dirty past, women could have X amount of baby daddies, women could literally make mistakes every single second of every single day and still get chosen. But it's just an extreme on the male side. So if you're not conventionally attractive, you're not conventionally into the same stereotype, if you're not conventionally what the normal population goes after, you're always going to be at a very large disadvantage. But then you throw all that other stuff on top of it, yeah, that's where we're going. But overall, this whole conversation is still going towards the nature of a woman. This is why I said, like, if you really break down what they're saying, it's not what a lot of people are saying it is.
So I can add it to my collection. I really do this nerd, and I can safely say, after 20 years of being a nerd, has never gotten me any pussy whatsoever. Nope.
So he's being
And to this day, I've still had issues where a lot of these women are so stuck on stereotypical men that sometimes just finding out that you do any of these activities will disqualify you, because all of a sudden a lot of women do this. They're not intelligent enough to associate certain characteristics with that individual. They think all of these characteristics all just gloss over everybody. Like, they don't think somebody that watches anime could be a boxer. They don't think somebody that watches anime can do, like, you have to just so happen to be a rapper that likes anime. You have to be a model that likes anime. You have to be because when you look at the people that they use for examples, they don't really watch anime. They've watched an anime or two, but they're not into anime. It's funny because anytime usually a woman is talking about a subject, even when it comes to their types and stuff, if you notice, they miss all the red flags that everybody else sees, and they never have any real logic, because every single time they'll say this and that for success rate, or this is what they do, it always ends in failure for them and all their followers. So it really doesn't add up, because they'll always tell you a template basic answer or solution, and it never works.
and this is his experience. He's basically telling you guys that all that nerd talk that women keep saying, I love nerds, he's saying it's all cap. And I think a lot of you guys agree in the comment section. Here we go.
Woman in the history of ever has ever wanted to date me because I told her I like Inuyasha or Cowboy Bebop or Dragon Ball Z. No woman has ever thrown it back on me because I told her I like going to arcades. A woman has never had to wring out her panties because...
And the funniest thing is, the closest you'll ever get to these type of activities is a OF creator that just so happens to like anime. Because when it comes to the general population that likes anime, right, these people aren't going out there just grabbing people. Because like I said, if you're a female, you're always getting some type of attention usually, right? But if you're a man, you're not going to generally connect on that level with a lot of people, because even when you go to anime cons and stuff like that, the people want the women that, as I said, they've watched a couple anime, not the anime girls. Like, yes, they'll be open to dealing with the anime girls, but what a lot of, I'll say this, the general population, the majority, aren't the most polished, people that are making all the best decisions and stuff like that. That's why, it's a pyramid thing. There's the cream of the crop, then there's some people that are pretty good at things, and then it falls down, right? And so generally speaking, you get these guys that really don't know how to hygiene, take care of themselves, and all of these things, a lot of times trying to pit themselves up against a nerd that has a body. So everybody's gonna see that she has a body, so definitely gonna go talk to her. Or like I said, the OF chick that's cosplaying as an anime chick. This is why a lot of times you do have these success rates that are low, because if you notice, it's like a lot of these people live in fantasy. And I'm not just generalizing everybody, but I'm talking about the general population, because it's like, we can discuss these things on how to correct the problem or see the solutions and stuff, but we also have to take in consideration what the majority do. And this is why I also like Medium Man's things and his content, because he thinks very much like me. I'm not trying to have a conversation on the few. I'm not trying to have a whole belief system on the exception of the rule. In order to have the highest amount of success and knowledge, you look at the general population. You look at what's the norm. I have a background in psychological operations in the Army, so we used to do studies on populations of humans, how they interact, propaganda, what controls how they think, etc. This is the way that you're supposed to think when you address these topics. You can't generally say, oh, I want a woman, but you don't have anything a woman wants. And if it's just money, she can get that anywhere. So you're nothing special. And this is why I said a lot of people, they don't understand that everything is a give and take and it's a sacrifice, yes, but you still have to develop yourself in a certain way and not play the victim like they do. This is the difference between masculinity and femininity.
I told her I had a collection of PS2 games. It's just never happened. Being a nerd never got me any bitches, just plain and simple. I'll tell you what it did get me though. It got me flamed and ridiculed often until about the beginning of high.
And see, this is the thing. So I'm gonna give you an example. So my nerdy stuff I kept to myself for the most part. I was the guy that was sitting in the back of the class drawing. I did know what I was doing, and I did know I did, you know, get good grades and stuff. I wasn't the most fashionable, didn't have the best haircuts. No, like I said, and when I was maturing more, and I noticed, hey, I like girls that, you know, I want to like actually address girls, talk to them, not just be around them and kind of be like, oh, I like these girls. And you know, when you start developing to a team, that's when you say, okay, well, I need to start dressing more appealing, more universally acceptable. I need to start carrying myself more universally acceptable. And so I didn't really have the overwhelming problems, because there's, like I said, there's always levels to it. But you know, I was in band and all these things. I wasn't physically fit. I wasn't out here being fast trying to see girls and stuff. I lost my virginity 17 senior year. I pretty much graduated a year earlier, but that was my girlfriend at the time, and this relationship developed into a lot of the type of person that I became later on, because of being young, naive, and, you know, letting women take advantage. And so this is why I said, like, a lot of these aspects, it's trial and error, because a lot of people don't understand. A lot of the people that you think are winning took a lot of L's first. A lot of people that you think were winning, they had to work and create this identity. And sometimes it's not them, sometimes it's a polished version of them, but it's still something you have to take in consideration. Hey, if you want to have success, you can't just throw anything in the water on a line. If you know what type of fish you want to catch, you got to decide what you're going to do. If you're going to spend that money on that bait, if you're going to take that time to catch that bait, right? So that's the type of conversation we're having.
No joke, I got called gay for nearly a whole semester after I mentioned that I played video games.
Why would people call him gay?
So the reason why they might, and these are extremes, like, you know, there's some extremes to this joke, and there's all this, some of it stems from the whole, so I'm a millennial. I grew up, I'm a millennial. And so 90s, a lot of the 90s and stuff like that's my thing, right? And so there was, and this is still a thing too, a lot of women were finding out that the guys that were into, the guys that were always playing 2K together, a lot of guys that were spending time, they were doing homosexual activity. But a lot of these guys were also the guys that were still more on the thuggish stuff, the athletic stuff, you know, the stuff that you'd be hearing about the football team, the football players, the athletes, how a lot of them were secretly doing stuff, wrestlers. But they also play into it because they were saying the not going after women made you gay, meaning that you were staying in a child's place made you gay. Because me personally, and if you know, if someone wants to hear this story later, I can tell you the details, but I was told the same thing in a joking, and I say that whatever type of way, with my dad, because he was one of the people that was like athlete in high school and stuff like that, popular, and he was out there dealing with women. And so when I was staying in a child's place, and then like I said, I was 17 when I graduated, so I was still younger than everybody else too, but you know, I was into anime, video games, hanging out with my friends. He tried to make a joke like that just for him to later on, I did something for Playboy, and he finds out about it, and the video is with two women. So it's even funnier because it, you know, it came full circle, throwing that right back. But my whole point is, that's funny. Pause, right? Anyways, but it came full circle when it comes to addressing that there's a time and place for everything, but then also you can develop later into the person you're supposed to be. But a lot of times it's about what's appropriate at the time. And so a lot of people didn't never get, like, you know, there was a branch of us that wasn't out there trying to do like the American Pie movies were very big at that time, about learning your virginity, losing your virginity, coming of age. This is when they first really started grooming a lot of us millennials into trying to create sexual deviance, and this is a lot of the people that eventually became the OF people and stuff, because this is when the Super Bowl, you know, the thing was pulled off, the first I think Madonna and Britney Spears kissing, like all of these things happened when I was growing up, so this was kind of like the sexualization of my generation. And so a lot of us were actually very innocent when it came to the general population, because a lot of us, it was still a big thing, you know, about your, you know, losing your virginity. It's not like everybody, it was, some kids were fast, some kids, you know, were still in a child's place, but for the most part, it wasn't like how it is now. So it was a totally different time, and we didn't have access to adult sites and all this other stuff, like just easily accessible. Like by the time I was in high school, I said we were at that point getting more closer to having access to learning about those type of things and being around that type of stuff.
Because he liked to play video games. What is that? What sense does that make?
Y'all think I'm making this up? This happened in 8th grade. Now, with this in mind, you can imagine how surprised I was when people began to come out of the woodwork just a few years later talking about how much they love nerdy men. Ooh, I love me a guy who likes anime. Now people are trying to rewrite history and say people didn't get bullied back in the day for liking anime. Oh, you didn't get bullied for liking anime? You got bullied because you Naruto ran in the hallways.
I've heard this before from social media. I've seen that tweet before where people were trying to invalidate their experience.
And like I said, it wasn't just that. Like, people are just trying to throw everything in a box. Lil Wayne and all that stuff was also out. Do you really think somebody that is watching anime, playing, like no, like a lot of times some of us weren't, you know, some of us don't just fit into stereotypes. You know, there was a lot of the gang culture could get you killed, so messed up. And so a lot of us in high school, if we were doing stuff with video games and stuff like that, it was also being safe, staying in a safe place, not dealing with any situation with the stereotypical crowd that could get you in trouble, in jail, get you in the wrong crowd and stuff. And so a lot of us didn't do the stereotypical stuff, so we didn't appeal to a lot of women. And so it wasn't always that you was doing something weird, it was that you were different. You weren't doing the norm. You weren't wearing the J's. Your parents didn't blow $300 on your shoes every other month just to make you feel cool around a bunch of other kids that it didn't matter about, just so that you would not get bullied, not get roasted. You know, some of us had to learn how to roast back. Some of us had to find a happy median, right? But all of us didn't just submit to whatever ideals that the stereotypical people did. And this is why I said, like, there's more to this conversation than what's being had. But generally speaking, women aren't going to nerds. That has nothing to do with what they really want.
I'm saying you didn't get bullied because you was a nerd, because you got bullied because you was running around, doing the Naruto run, or you was playing Dragon Balls.
And the worst part is, Naruto, don't get me wrong, Naruto came out a little bit later, because let me see, I was in the Gundam and all that stuff before Naruto really came out, and people started talking about the Naruto run. Dragon Ball Z was probably way more, people probably were introduced and in touch with Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon way more at most of the time than Naruto. So it's just kind of funny because this whole Naruto thing, I think that all of that stuff happened years and years later after I got out of high school, if I remember correctly. I'm not talking about the show, I'm just talking about the aspect of someone being obsessed enough with Naruto to be Naruto running. I'm not saying that it wasn't there, but I'm saying for it to be a widespread thing, we had more of the DBZ crash outs than we did Naruto. When you start talking about Naruto, you start kind of getting more into I guess the early Gen Zers, in my opinion.
In lunch hall, and he's like, no, that's not anything that we do. And then he's gonna say something that's actually sad, man. I'm like, damn, And I was like, that's crazy that people would label these types of black men like this. Listen to what he says. This is very crazy.
He tried to go Super Saiyan in the middle of class. Bro, how you gonna tell me what happened to me? How you gonna tell me I didn't get called gay for liking Dragon Ball Z? The worst offenders of this revisionist history campaign are the girls who want to sit there and tell you, oh, y'all didn't like us back in high school. Y'all always went after all of the white girls. Hold up, let me get this straight. So you're telling me that as hard as it was back then to find a girl, let alone a black girl who was in...
Once again, because we're talking about a general the stereotypical behavior of the black woman, this is mostly what this conversation is about, because we're also bringing up race. So this is the normal lie and excuse. They always project in some sort of way. They always got to throw it back to you in some sort of way. They always got to be a victim in some sort of way. The reason why they said this is because they're used to lying and not taking accountability. The men that they're probably talking about are probably the men that were out of their league, the popular kids, all of these jocks and stuff like that. If they had that happen to them, that has nothing to do with the nerdy guys. That has nothing to do with the general black men. That has everything to do with their terrible choice. And they never pick up on this part, because all of the men they usually pick, for some reason, they're baby daddies and stuff like that. This is why they have all these stories about them being DL or a deadbeat or something like that. Like, y'all don't know what y'all looking at, so it doesn't even matter really what you say. We're just going to go based upon reality and what happens all the time. These women don't know anything. So it's like, if you come to the conclusion that, oh, this is how they really look at me and stuff like that, no, they're just generalizing everything. It has nothing to do with reality or whatever like that. One time I've had a woman say, oh, I thought you were gay because you stand up straight. And I'm just like, because I was in special ops military and I had military bearing even when I was in the civilian world. That's how immature and lost a lot of these women are. And these are women that are well past 20. They still haven't understood things that they should, even at a simple level. And it's really crazy when you think about it. These are people making laws and positions, driving and stuff. They are thinking like this, where they can't really think for themselves and really address what's in front of them. They have to make a general rule, address it, believe it, without any type of evidence or any type of reasoning, and then they react on it. It's just a really bad thing. It's almost like having a whole experiment without doing any research.
That nerdy stuff. Nerdy black men was just out here curving nerdy girls left and right.
Man, this is some bull. That's a great point.
And this is, let me be real, and this is the thing. Yeah, all the nerdy girls, they had a guy or they were being used. Because in that time, a lot of those girls that are saying, oh, they went after this, they went after that, those were a lot of the times usually the school bus down or something like that. Because a lot of those women are the ones that, in order to be popular and stuff like that, they let people use their body, they showed off their body or something of that nature if they didn't have the social proofing. So a lot of those women, they were always occupied. So the nerdy girl, she might have had a secret relationship with the popular dude doing this and doing that. But that's why I said, like, when it came to actual nerdy guys that weren't stereotypical, it was already a drought, because there weren't no girls to turn down. There were no attention to be like women always make up all of these lies. Like, for instance, it's crazy how the same man they're not into enough to sleep with when they're their husband, for some reason, when their husband stays out at 3:00 at night, all of a sudden he's a pussy magnet. Does that make any sense? But like I said, that's how women think.
I've heard that before. It's like, well, the nerd guys didn't like black women, so they were going for white women. But he was like, we wouldn't get no chicks. And that was so. And I'll say this. As usual, it's still a female selection problem. If you went after the guy
that you were attracted to. How, and a lot of times when it comes to some of these nerdy anime girls too, they were weirdos. They couldn't just deal with a nerd. They had to deal with the emo kid. They had to deal with the guy that was really obsessed with anime and he liked anime featured women. So if you see a bunch of pale curvy chicks and all this other stuff, and you're obsessed with that, then you probably are going to try to go after a Japanese girlfriend or a white girlfriend or whatever like that. But that has nothing to do with the general population. They can't, like I said, they can't think in individual terms. There was never a whole movement of males doing just one thing. There was always a male for just about every option. That's not the same for females. Like, females literally don't a lot of times think for themselves. They most of them, generally speaking, let's be real, feminist, won't submit, want to be a boss chick, men don't make enough. That's generally the majority of females, the what makes up their entire personality. So, as I said before, but you can't say the same thing for men. Men pretty much follow what nature says, which is common sense. But outside of that, when it comes to the complexities people try to make up about men and lie about this and that, it's not there. It's not true.
In high school, no girls like this. So you mean to tell me I curved black women so I could get white women? They didn't like us either. So
and you hear and you hear the lies these women make, because if you hear them all the time, oh, these men are lonely, they can't get no women, this and that, oh, they dusty, oh, I don't know, their whatever, their attitude. So all these men are thirsty, all these men aren't getting curbed by y'all, all these men are this. So who are they curbing? If it's like they act like we have lineups of women just addressing us. So who are we curbing? This is why I said you can tell it's a lie and it's always a projection, because you can tell she's talking about the 1% of guys that they're still chasing because they still never grew up and they still have a high school mentality. They're still talking about the same guy, and then sometimes they even make up the whole damn story, just totally, right? But they're still talking about getting curved by the same 1% of guys while they're curving the 99%. So it's like, as you hear, like, none of this stuff ever adds up. What men are just turning down women, for one, because even the top percentage of men, like, these are the guys that are like the cream of the crop, pretty much can get what they want. Those men are turning down women. But below that, I don't know any man that's just sitting there saying, well, I'm just curving women that are good women, black women, all this other stuff women, because, oh, I just have a certain type. That's a lie. That is a lie.
And I know you guys have heard this before. They say, well, y'all didn't even like black women. Like, how you know? You never even tried to mess with us because we was, nerds. That's what he's saying.
I wish I was getting approached by some nerdy black girls back in high school and middle school. In my entire school career, I only knew 3 black girls who was into nerdy shit. One of them used to bully me, the other one friend zoned me, and the third one moved away. Now, 2 out of 3 of those girls are dating white guys now, but that's besides the point. All I'm saying is, nerdy black girls, nerdy girls in general, they was not just popping up out of thin air back.
The thing is, what people still not getting is nerdy girls still think like girls. Just like in nowadays society, where you see from the busted to the baddest all saying the same thing. Guy has to be making over 6 figures, has to be over 6 foot. That's why I said these conversations almost not even need to be had when it talks to a lot of these women. You can say, okay, I'm gonna ignore everything that you say and I'm gonna react to everything that you say and do to what really your nature tells, and I guarantee you'll have way more success. Oh, I don't like this. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, I want a nice guy. Oh, I want a nerdy guy. Well, if you ever just decide to just treat them how they want to be treated, what does it matter what you're characterized as, right? Because you get the results. You see that? That's because they act on emotions, and emotions pass. I can be pissed off and then have a logical thought process of how that actually benefits me, and I can change my mood literally within seconds. And this is why you don't react on emotions, right? But that's what they do.
They like y'all say they were. If anything, the nerdy girls were the ones who were going after other dudes, because there was always this weird phenomenon that happened in high school where almost none of the nerdy guys had girlfriends, but almost all of the nerdy girls had boyfriends. Look, because pussy is accepted everywhere. Let's be real. It's like I hate when people try to make these things difficult.
even the most busted of women have access to sex pretty much 24/7. It's only men that really don't have that. And then to make it even crazier, I mean, I'm just gonna say this too, man. Some of them had them real soft, thick builds, like where they were just sitting inside of like a room, reading manga or something like that. That type of thick, where it was just like genetics mixed with a little bit of sedentary lifestyle, where it just makes the fluff extra cloudy and soft, just making me have flashbacks. But anyways, let's keep it going. You know, almost like the thick goth chick, you know, thick goth chick archetype. But yeah, like that's the funny thing. Like I don't think I ever heard of a guy saying he didn't want, and that was dumb too, because even back in my day, you know, what's her name from Bleach? She was a very big black chick on Bleach. I can't think of her name right now, and I do watch Bleach. I just can't think right now because I'm trying to think about this stuff. But she was always on somebody's hit list when it came to like whatever, and she was a thick black chick. But at the same time, nobody was passing up any thick or even nerdy chick. I mean, now I will say, even as a younger guy, you get a chick that is not appealing at all, doesn't have good hygiene and stuff, you're not just gonna pick that just because you're both nerds. Let's be real. But at the same time, you know, nobody was turning down a cute to attractive nerdy chick just because she wasn't the right complexion. That's a lie. That is one of the biggest lies ever.
That's a great observation. That's a great observation. You would assume that the nerdy girl would be with the nerdy guy, but nope. They were with conventionally attractive young men, I guess. So that's another great point.
Back in the day, it was a drought for nerdy dudes. I remember back in high school when we had this esports club, right? Joining the esports club, right? There was this one girl out of like 10, maybe 12 dudes. Anytime she would walk in the classroom, she just had a legion of dudes flocking her. She wasn't even that attractive.
And let me be real, this was honestly one of the pinnacles of the feminism movement, honestly, when I was growing up, because even though we didn't have a lot of women that were naturally feminists, we had adults that were. And you could tell by how things were changing and how everything was being groomed in society, because at this time, this is when they were teaching us to put women on a pedestal. They were telling us to hold the door open for every freaking woman. This is the time when society had its chivalrous era, brainwashing the men to be subservient doormats, while slowly and surely training these women to be just what they are today. Just can't get enough, feel like they deserve everything and no accountability. This is the generation where all of those bridges collided, and this is why you seen men being the nice guy, thinking to go bring the flowers to the date and all this other stuff, while these women were being socially programmed, reading Zane books. I know a lot of people don't know, you know, some people, if you grew up in my era, Zane books, watching the thug era, watching the gang era. So this is why I said, like, this was a very interesting time, especially with me having a background in propaganda. This is when a lot of my generation was programmed. And this is why I said a lot of these arguments are a lie, especially if you've been in that period, because you knew if you wasn't a fake thug, you really wasn't getting none. And if you was a fake thug, you was the one getting thrown on the wall at the house parties. You were the one that the girl was trying to get for prom king. You know, you were popular in high school. You were the one that had parents that were blowing money on this and that. It was very plain and simple. It's the same thing. It was all materialistic, and what was acceptable by society, what was in at that time, fashion, etc.
She had teeth that looked like picket fences. Like, her teeth were throwing up gang signs. They were going in like all sorts of opposite directions. It was crazy. But for some odd reason, she always had this legion of dudes around her. So to anybody who says, you just did...
And let's be real. So a lot of those guys, and this is not me being judgmental. This is just me being real. So these were a lot of these guys that were eventually horny creeps, because these were also the guys that were watching sexual things, and their outlet was anime porn and stuff like that. Prawn. While a lot of us people that were more well-rounded, like I said, we weren't into being sexually active. We weren't into the gang stuff. We weren't into, like, all we did was we wanted to be kids. We liked what we liked. Yes, we liked girls, but there's a difference between liking girls and experienced girls and then having a lust for them. You know what I mean? And so it was never pressing like that. And so the reason why some of these women and all this other stuff had these weird experiences with some of them was because these are men that were socially awkward anyways a lot of times, and they already had a lust for some weird reason, because if they didn't get none in some weird, strange way, they probably were watching a bunch of stuff and material that had them wanting to try to be, get with these women and do things. But as I said before, when I was younger, I was into video games. I was a classic nerd. I wasn't into, you still end up getting exposed to that stuff, but that wasn't the drive. If you were still a virgin, like, you weren't really thinking about sex, because that doesn't make any sense unless you were gullible and into peer pressure, and they shaped you into thinking that, hey, this is the way to go if you want to be cool and successful.
Want us?
Shut your goddamn ass up.
That's all we wanted back then. All we wanted was to be able to play Budokai Tenkaichi 2 with our little boo thing right next to us. But we couldn't get that. It was hard out here for nerds. And then you got people who just get nasty with it. I saw this one dude on Twitter say, you didn't get bullied because you watched anime. You were just a horrible person. Ugh.
That's what bothered me. That was sad. I'm like, how are you gonna say that this guy was a horrible person? I was like, man, that pissed me off. I was like, how do you just make an assumption like that when you don't even know a person, to say that they were horrible people? What? As a kid in high?
As I said before, a lot of times people were projecting, but overall it's all about how society perceives things. Because like I said, like, during this time, there's the comic book people, the comic book nerds and all of that stuff, but a lot of them were associated with perverted activities, wanting lustful interactions, and then being socially awkward all at the same time. So that's where you just got to understand, if you have if you're wearing a certain hat, even if you're not doing it and people kind of place you in that, they're going to associate you with the aspects of those people and those activities regardless. And the only thing that could really separate you from those type of interactions is understanding how those people think and they interact, and then moving forward with how you carry yourself in public. Because as I said before, some of these people who are having these discussions and conversations, they were also the type of people that didn't understand, hey, this might not be the most appropriate place to show this aspect of myself off. This might not be the perfect time to have this conversation. The popular girls might not want to hear about anime, but you can show off other parts of yourself that will be more appealing to something that they can meet in the middle. And so a lot of these supposed nerds and stuff like that, they haven't developed those traits and skill sets even until now. And if you look at it, there's always going to be a divide with those who understand how to deal with women and those who understand what social acceptance brings and stuff like that. But you can still like your stuff, and it not make you a social weirdo. And a lot of these people don't get that because they don't know how to balance that. And so I keep getting distractions and stuff like that. I'm not going to be able to finish this video how I want to. I want to do the whole video because there were some other talking points. But overall, generally speaking, that is where a lot of people are getting the disconnect. They're not having the full conversation. In women's nature, it's not that they want somebody nerdy. They want somebody they can control. They want somebody they can manipulate. And a lot of times, they're starting to find that the more guys that can be pressured and bullied and manipulated are guys that haven't had access to a lot of women. And the thing is, like, I've even known some nerds that were good with moving, you know, making moves on certain groups of females. Like, there was nerds that were great at pulling goth girls, and you just be like, damn, how do you get that? But my whole point is, they understood there was something that they had to develop in order for them to be able to be successful in what they're doing. And so what ended up happening is there was a clear divide on who was successful and who was not in developing these activities, because of them understanding that fact and moving forward with the process of doing that and being more susceptible to women. But anyways, I'll be back. I have to handle something, as I said before, duty calls.